In Nigeria, the relationship between the government and its citizens has long been characterized by gaps in communication, trust, and active participation. Many Nigerians perceive politics and governance as responsibilities limited to elected officials, fostering disengagement and apathy. However, political accountability and active citizen engagement are pivotal for a thriving democracy. Nigerians must recognize the power they hold to demand better governance, influence policies, and foster accountability. Now, closing this gap is critical to ensure a more inclusive and progressive society. Now, to join me to discuss the topic for the day, which is citizens' engagement and, of course, accountability, is Olugbenga George. He is a media executive and also the president of Coalition of Young Compatriots in Africa. And he joined me live in studio. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. Good evening.
Good evening. All right, so before we even start this conversation, right, can you just quickly run us through what Coalition of Young Compatriots in Africa is about?
All right. So Coalition of Young Compatriots in Africa is a conglomeration of organizations, who are passionate about maximizing the potential of young Africans, especially where their involvement in governance is concerned. We see a lacuna, between young people who are in the corporate sector, who are in private life, who do not see the need or the reason to participate or be involved, in governance and issues of politics and all of that. So as people who are also in the corporate sector, who, interact with these people every day, we decided to step into that gap and see how we can harness the potential of all of these people to see how they can contribute to national development. So in our team, we have different groups of young professionals, bankers, medical doctors, lawyers, and all of that. So basically, the idea is to be able to have informed knowledge and informed perspectives to issues that have to do with policy, issues that have to do with citizens' engagement and all of that. So we see to it to ensure that we not only inform the people, we also carry them along in the process. We are in between. So we know what's happening on the side of the government, and we tell them, this is what's happening. How can you contribute? How can you critique these policies? And what are the adjustments you think that we need to introduce? And then we now take it, as a feedback to those in authority.
Interesting. So that it means that civic education is a major part of what you do.
Absolutely.
So when you talk about civic education, right, how well are we faring when it comes to how enlightened are we as a people when it comes to the things that borders around governance, politics, and all of that?
I think we are below average, in Africa, most especially in Nigeria. We are below average because for a long time, especially since the reintroduction of democracy in 1999, you've had the same set of people determining the outcomes of elections. Until recently, talking about the 2023 general election, where we now had interest, but that interest did not eventually lead to the interest, of the people. There is a gap between that. But awareness in terms of wanting to participate, increased greatly to a large percent in 2023. And I hope that, and that's what we're trying to look at now, to build on that and ensure that we are able to sustain it into subsequent elections in 2027, in 2031, in 2035, and as democracy evolves in Africa.
But you know that if we keep preparing for elections, we're still getting it wrong in the
Absolutely.
country. So how are we correcting that?
Okay, so yes, I like that question because that is what we do basically. So people have to see, Africans have to see, Nigerians have to see, that the responsibility of having a stable, virile, and egalitarian society, an Africa we want, a democracy we desire that is admirable. It is an everyday work. and everyone has to be involved. Everyone has to be part of the process. A lot of people do feel, but I hope that their perspectives have changed now, especially with the introduction of new policies that now makes everybody feel the biting pains, of the economy. Everybody now has a different perspective. Nevertheless, that gap still exists. I interact with people every day, and I do that intentionally. I've realized that instead of most people to actually allow the situation to lead them to make a permanent decision to be a part of the system, they still see it as it is us against them. So we are not going to be part of this. We are just going to watch. I've seen many young people come out to say, I'm never going to be involved in anything that has to do with election, that has to do with governance every day. Now, I'll give you a very practical example. Yesterday, I was somewhere here in Lagos, and in that community, for whatever reason, they didn't have power. So I eavesdropped on conversation, and someone was saying that, we had a group of persons, bringing the youth in that community together to go and protest, or at least have a march to express their displeasure with with lack of power in that community. And then I heard, no, I'm not going to be involved, or no, all of them started saying that. And then I took my time. I said, why do you not want to be involved? Is this not your community? Are you not part of this place? They say, these politicians, they know how to do their thing. I said, that's the mistake that we keep on making. What are you? I realized that 80% of the 5 persons that were there were graduates. They had gone to school. They had graduated. They had come back. Some were working, some were still or are still looking for jobs. So why do you think that should not be a part of this? Is having power not important to your existence as a human being? So you see, one of the challenges that we have is, well, maybe I'll come to it, but one of the major challenges that we have is that we are quick to jump to our civic rights without understanding that we have civic responsibilities.
I get you.
So where it starts from is, the consciousness that I also have responsibilities in this thing called development in my community. So we have parts to play, and we shouldn't shy away, when the opportunity comes to be a part of, contributing to a social movement, to something that will fix a social problem.
I get it that we must be intentional about facilitating platforms that create rooms for dialogue. And one of those things that people have always done in the past has been, what's the word? Town hall meetings. They've organized rallies, they've organized protests and all of that. But you see, the challenge I have is that, they say definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Absolutely.
How do you tell people to go and protest because they don't have power when they have seen how protests in the past have gone? That's number one. And how people compromise during those protests, and how it seems like it was just a complete waste of their time. So what else can we do creatively to create that platform for dialogue and then find real effective results in the end? Because that's the whole essence of all of those things.
Absolutely. Well, personally, I'm not a fan of protest. I have written several times and have spoken at different platforms to say that I do not believe that protest is the way to go where it comes to actually getting things right in this country. I used to say that the Nigerian structure is already formed, and most of the people who are kicking against it did not form it. So if you want to actually have a kind of society that you desire to see, you have to form your own system as well. And you have to be patient while doing it. Because this system, has been built over years. From 1960, the story of our independence and the story of our democracy and the military incursions in between have introduced quite a lot of things that are alien to us as a people. But despite this, society continues to evolve. And in this evolvement, we must learn strategies, to evolve alongside. So you ask me, like you are doing right now, apart from going out to protest, what should we do? We should engage. Nevertheless, before I talk about engaging, I need to say that protest is actually a very, very fundamental tool in democracy. let's forget how the reactions of the government
Or how the outcomes
or
become.
outcomes have been. There are ways to protest that is peaceful. I know the next question that comes is Lekki October 2020. Yes, for most of the conversations that we've had, that has been the situation. Or maybe end bad governance protest.
The end hunger protest.
Or end bad governance protest. You know, a lot of things, which is what brings us to the place of responsibility, actually. You know, a lot of people do think, like I say, that people in government are going to actually do some good stuff, and I beg to disagree. Actually, they are servants of the people. And because the people do not understand that a political leader is his servant, your vote, you know, actually brought him into that position. And he would never have come close or had the opportunity that he has to provide leadership if you did not elect him. Or if you chose not to participate in the process that elected him.
So it goes back to the first point that we made and established that clearly there's a huge ignorance gap. Right?
Absolutely.
But you see, in ignorance yet, there's also that part of where information seems lost on people. We're not able to pull out information. We're not able to access information. So in the fight for, like, drawing accountability amongst our leaders, there's that part where we must, first of all, know what it is that they need to be accountable for. Then when we then know, right, there's a part of where we then find the things that they have done that now we put that as a basis to check if accountability has happened. That information usually is lost on a lot of people. We don't have, how do we access information? Because that's the only way it can breed some level of transparency.
You know, it's quite interesting that people actually choose what they were interested in today. We are in a world where we have information overload. You know, if you go on social media right now, I have certain things that catches my attention on social media, for example, you know, and there are people who are stuck on social media for almost 24 hours of their lives, and you are wondering what they are doing, you know, with that social media. So people need to understand, first of all, I think it's a fundamental issue that we need to address, that it is a responsibility. And, you know, when we use responsibility, it sounds subtle. So, but I would rather say that it is an obligation, you know, to be interested, because that's the only way. Because it is democracy, it has to be counted by numbers of people who participate and people who don't participate. So first, if you're able to address the problem of, say, I'm not going to be a part of this because of how the system has been, then we have solved one problem. Then after solving that problem, you now say, okay, what are the responsibilities, what are the duties of this person that we have elected, that we have sent to Abuja, that we have sent to, you know, the state assembly, that we have sent to the different places? What are their responsibilities? What do we expect from them, you know, according to the dictate of this office? So when we know that, we can now begin to check. Personally, I have been very passionate about this. And some years back, I remember designing something I called the Citizens Umpire Bill. You know, I tried to run it around a few persons, and they're like, this is unrealistic. So what did they say? It basically said that the people in every community should be able to organize themselves enough to know that these are the major projects that we need in this vicinity. So when you do that, you know, you can now begin to approach and interview, question the different people, you know, who are presenting themselves for leadership. It sounds vague. That's the point.
Let me ask you, how did you do it? Because you see, let me tell you something, right? You need to understand the kind of generation we're dealing with.
Okay.
Did you put it in a TikTok dance? Did you put it in an Instagram? Do you understand what I'm saying? Because you see, let me tell you something. Even in advocacy and fighting for activism and involvement and engagement, so civil society needs to start to realize that, if it is TikTok that the people you're trying to educate are on, then you need to be intentional about how you disseminate that information. The information cannot just be a regular information. Look at this document that was, you know, nicely put together by Enough is Enough. It's a very lengthy document. How many people today can sit down and say they want to read all this document and assimilate it and, you know, and understand what it is about? But if we too were conscious, we need to understand that we must leverage all these tools that social media has presented to us, and let us start to intentionally throw this content in the faces of the people in the language they understand.
Absolutely.
Do you get? I get you. I mean, it's a very commendable thing to do. But I would say that for us to really change or transform anything in Nigeria today, I think there's HDAD. It's a lot. Even me right now, some days I have HDAD, and I will not blame anybody that has HDAD. You know why? The problem of Nigeria, I intentionally want to have memory loss with the problem of Nigeria. Let me not just remember. So, do you understand? Just to maintain my sanity. I want to understand what your take on is rather on our legal system and how it's impacting this citizens' engagement. And I'll tell you why. I was telling you during the break, and I will say it again. I'm not afraid because nobody they feed me for this country. But you see, the amount of impunity that goes on at the polling units and the collation centers in Nigeria is quite alarming. And it seems like, our justice system is completely comatose because it doesn't seem like anybody, if you try to do anything wrong, right, you will be penalized for it. Take, for instance, what is going on in Edo State as a case study. There were so many, issues around what was recorded at the polling unit and what was eventually announced as a result and all of that. So that is why the drama that is going on is too heavy, and the clashes and all of that, they had to move the entire tribunal to Abuja because they understand that it is volatile because people are angry. If I voted this person, let me see it's a different thing if I voted and my votes were counted and the number, I see it exactly, and yet my candidate lost. It gives me some level of comfort. So, okay, maybe we need to work harder, right? But if it was counted and you are seeing a result at the polling unit, you're seeing a different result at the collation center, then it makes voting apathy be on the rise, right? I can tell you for free. I don't think I'm interested in voting in this country anymore. But tell me. No, I will say it. I did tell you, nobody they pay my bills. I'll tell you. So tell me what you think about our legal system and how it has also affected citizens' engagement, and it has also affected political accountability.
Well, thank you very much. This is not even a matter to laugh at. When you talk about the judicial system, it is very pitiable. That we find ourselves in a situation where we now have to start casting aspersions and doubts on the supposedly most credible institution. What you and me know is that we need to firm up our institutions in Nigeria. I understand why people, throw stones at the judiciary because they say the judiciary is the last hope of
the common man.
Yes, of the common man. So we expect that if somebody does wrong to you, you should be able to go to court and get justice. But justice now has a price, in Nigeria, and it is quite despicable. To address that, it is not a one-off thing because we are talking about people, sitting in positions. And it is not just in the judiciary. I dare to say that it is in every institution in Nigeria, from the electoral body, who have their own round of wrongs, to the judicial system, to the media. People intentionally tweak stories that are not true, which they know are not true. So sometimes it is just like hanging, giving the judiciary a bad name so we can hang it. So everybody can find a place to rest their oars for all the excuses and the anomalies that we get involved in.
So you think it's a collective thing?
It is absolutely a collective thing. One cannot work without the other. If before you approach the courts, there are certain things that that this thing is wrong in the first place. But people will do it. I will say, let's go to court to go and settle it. So what do you expect the judge at that point to do? I do not speak for them. I hope you understand where I'm coming from. But I believe that Nigerians, we need to be intentional. We need to see our situation as something that is just beyond aesthetics. We need to understand that this is a life and death situation and then decide to change it. If we do not do that, I'm telling you, we'll just be going round and round in circles till we do not have a country anymore, because that is where we are going toward. And, talking about the challenges, one of the things that I was going to say, is that we do not have a very strong national identity. I guess that's one of the reasons why every time we are supposed to have an election, what informs people's choices in voting? Those are questions that we begin to ask.
I can tell you, in the 2023 elections, what informed people's choices was who was going to favor me. I just said in the previous segment before you joined me on set, I was saying that the current Lagos State Assembly drama that is going on, where somebody was impeached, another person was installed.
Somebody was removed.
Somebody was, oh, okay, well, you see. Now, the speaker has come out to say that the process was flawed. Do you understand? But you see, even with the speaker, I'm also challenging him. Okay. Because for every time you turn a blind eye to justice not being meted on a situation, just be waiting that your own is coming. Because what goes around, that is what has happened. Absolutely. Because over the years, you've turned a blind eye to other things. Now it is now your turn. You're not saying that due process was not followed. Is it today that we know that due process is not followed in all these things? So this then speaks to one of the biggest challenges that we have when it comes to issues around citizens engagement and political accountability. Corruption, right? How do we even start to intentionally address the subject of corruption? Because it's not about making noise. Because all the noise we've made in the past, where has it stopped taking us to?
You know, I'm happy that we have touched on the issue of corruption. I was going to touch it last because of the time it will take. And I am one of the persons who believe that the political leader cannot be corrupt if the followers and the people who elected them are also not corrupt. I do not exonerate any one of us, you know, from the pro-corruption cycle. I know that it is easy to, you know, cast a stone on the politicians who, of course, have, you know, they have the bread and the butter in their hands. But why do they have that bread and butter up to the level at which they have? It's because of our own level of corruption and greed. Let me tell you the truth. I have been involved, at least to some extent, in politics at the local level, in seeing somebody, you know, win an election, and have seen the process that goes through. When you are credible, you have a very nice profile, you have, you know, a pedigree that they can believe upon, and you approach the people. I want to lead you. Look at what I have done. I have done in the private sector, in my life as an individual. Say all of the grammar and speak all of the English that you have. If you did not bring something for the people at the end of the day and say, they will say you are speaking English. I have been in several places. I've seen this one countless times, and that is the Nigerian system. So if we are saying that kind of leader that you denied access, you know, and he eventually finds a way somehow to put himself there, do you think he will listen to you? So we need to, that's why I was saying earlier, that it's something that we need to make a choice to do. I'm talking about the Nigerian citizens now. It has to be a decision that we will do. And why do we have to make that decision? It is because of our future. I keep saying that most persons who find themselves in leadership today have gotten to the peak of their life and their career somehow. You know, there probably isn't much they want to do anymore. It is a privilege to serve, you know, and the few of them who are able to actually provide leadership and serve the people, there are only very few. You know, they go back home to rest. They feel that they have done something remarkable with their lives. But those who do not have the opportunity to will continue to cast aspersions on the system. Those who did not benefit from that person will continue to cast aspersions on the system. Now, it takes us back to what do we expect from our leaders when we vote them into power? What do we expect? What should we expect?
It's not what should we expect. We know what we should expect.
Sometimes our expectations are not realistic. That's where I'm going.
No, we know what we should expect from our leaders. When it comes, I mean, there are standards that we can, let's even say, let's follow standards across the world, right? A very, very habitable country, a very, very, you know, tolerable, good economy,
good roads,
and all of good, security, infrastructure and everything, and just a government that seems to put people first, right? That's what we expect. That is what we should expect from our leaders.
Absolutely.
The first question you ask is the real issue. What do we want from our leaders, right? Because it is what we want from our leaders that is trumping every other thing. Yes. It's like ourselves. We buy the things we do not need. There are things that you should have that is essential for your daily living and your well-being. There are things that you want that might not necessarily be essential for whatever it is. So what we are putting first every single time that I see an election is forthcoming, it is what we want. We want somebody that will favor me when the person is in power.
I think it goes beyond.
No, it does.
Because most of the time, look at the 2023 election processes across the political parties. Look at the different dramas, that played out from the Labour Party. Okay, maybe the Labour Party seemed a little more organized at the time, in pushing forward a candidate that was generally acceptable. But you go to the People's Democratic Party, the major opposition party. You go to the All Progressives Congress, and you see that what were the processes that produced all of the people
That's
emerged?
what I'm saying. The delegates are after the person that will grease their palm. That's what I'm saying. That's what they want. They want bribe at that point. And so you see, it is
so you see those delegates now, and this is my point, that we should not separate those delegates, those who are involved, from the Nigerian people. Because
so that's why I'm even coming to.
They are the Nigerian people.
That's where I'm coming to.
Who are supposed to make the right decision.
Absolutely. You see, one of the challenges that I have observed over the years, we've said it over and over again countless times on this show, and that is because we were also lectured politically to become a lot more politically literate. It is not at polling units that elections are won or lost.
Absolutely.
It is at the point of party level where delegates emerge. So it is not a function of I'm picking between the devil and the deep blue sea. No. It is a function that we have presented two good candidates. Whoever wins, we're good. So how do we start to get youth apathy in that political structural involvement? It's not just only in the voting. There's youth apathy in voting. But you see, that's youth engagement, in participation, where we are part of a political structure that then eventually brings a candidate. How do we start to do that?
Well, there are different options before us. Since the law and democracy provides that for you to participate, you have to be part of a political party. I think that is where it starts from. Every Nigerian needs to be interested in partisanship. A lot of people say, yeah, well, I'm not partisan, but we need to, because that's the process that produces the leader. And one of the things that I remember prior to 2023 election, is that why don't we gather ourselves en masse in 10 million and 5 million and join a political party and have the same decision? If you, me, and the 1 million people that join this party have a goal in mind for which we are joining this party, and nobody will turn around when we get into that system because somebody has given him something in his envelope, and we say that this is our decision. This is why we came here. By the time it will be us against them, it will be clear. And then when you now talk about the number, you talk about the strength to actually withstand that decision. The strength is there. The strength is there.
Benga, you know that poverty is weaponized in this country.
And
so how do you expect
poverty
that to
will not live? Poverty will not leave this country.
How would you expect that to happen without that bribe happening, that greasing of palm?
The question that I keep asking most people who collect these greased palms or these, Greek goods is, how long can these Greek goods sustain you?
Do they think about that?
Well, they have to. That's the part of the responsibility that I am telling you. So it goes beyond just wanting to vote. No. The decisions that we make, what is the implication on our lives in the next 4 years, in the next 8 years, in the next 12 years, in the next 20 years? What kind of country do we want to see? And what kind of decisions do we need to make? What kind of sacrifices? Let me use that word, because it's not easy sometimes if you haven't eaten for 2 days and somebody approaches you with 10K and say, Diboko Sebe, Diboko Gbowo. People go ahead and do all of that. But the soup that you will cook with that 10K, please, how long will it last? It will not even last you before that person is sworn in. And when the person is sworn in, you have no access, you have no right to even approach him anymore. So we need to, that's why I said, every time we talk about the political class, I always say, no, it's not a function of the political class. The citizens have a very big role. Do the the political class have a responsibility? Yes, they have a very serious responsibility. But the voters, the electorate, the masses need to wake up from their slumber. We need to stop being petty. We need to stop being disturbed with base sentiment. I mean, it will shock you, and that's one of the things that I wanted to say. That one of the things that still informs people's decisions right now, when it comes to political decisions, is the ethnicity and religion. And how can this even play out in an age where in certain climes, the subject of God or
But
devil is not even,
did
is not
religion
even,
really
is no
play
longer.
out in the last election? I don't think religion made any influence. Because, I mean, for the first time, if religion was that powerful, we will not have a Muslim presidency. We won't. You know.
I don't want to talk about that. But,
You
but the truth of the matter is, yes, I understand what you are saying. Nobody expected that ticket to fly.
But he did.
But it did. So against the wish or the imaginations of the Nigerian people, people thought that that's something to just look away from, you know. But it is a factor where it needed to play out. Okay, so let me say what I did want to say. The country is actually jaundiced. All right, people do not have direct perspective to things. People look at things from the lens of their ethnicity. People look at things from the lens of their religion. So where you have the larger number of these people, they are the ones that will always make decisions. Always. So it's probably safe to say that the region of the country that believe in a Muslim ticket, that supported it, you know, they had nothing against having a Muslim president and a Muslim vice president. And they have the numbers.
Who says they have the numbers?
Well, they have the numbers.
Our censors have not said
statistically,
that. Nope.
in every election.
Our censors have not said that. And you see, part of what we're talking about, education and engagement, right? I think beyond just saying, oh, be intentional, check who your local government is, that, we need to be clear that we require a census in this country. I hear that one is coming up this year. And it is not just census for census sake. We need to be intentional about documenting every single citizen. If India, that they are 1.something billion citizens, and they have everybody's identification number, then what are we? 200 million people plus?
Let's hope
so that is where it starts from. Because guess what? All these years that they say they did not have numbers, they might have landmass. That does not mean they have population. Because guess what? How many northerners you see them trooping into the southern part of the country because of better livelihood and all of that?
Interesting.
So we need to be clear on those numbers.
It is interesting that we are now having these conversations. All right? This is part of engagement. This is part of enlightenment. Because the truth of the matter is, if you are in the political space and you are going to run an election at the national level in this country, one of the things that most of them go into when they are going to have conversations, negotiations, is that there is a mental positioning already that the North has larger numbers,
and they must be well represented.
And they must be well represented. So in any decision that we want to make, it is now that we are saying, okay, let's check the figures. Which is good for the development of democracy in this country. Yes, we can now say, let us check the figures. And let us be intentional about checking it. And let us not leave this figure checking, you know, to the authorities. Let us go down and do it by ourselves. You know, let's hope, like you said, that the 2025 censor, let's hope that it takes place.
And let's hope it's credible. All right, so quickly, if you had one final call to action for the young person watching, what would you say?
Well, for the young person watching, you know, my advice for you, you know, is to wake up, actually, and become responsible. I realize that many of us are not responsible. We do not feel concerned. We feel that this is just going to end the same way it has always ended. And if you keep having that position and that notion, nothing is actually going to change. And then you continue to go around in the same circle. So we need to change our minds. And when we change our minds, we get involved. We become responsible citizens. And we take our obligations as citizens seriously, rather than just leaving it to other people to answer for us.
Thank you so much. That's well said. Thank you, Olugbenga George. We had an amazing conversation. And I would say that citizens' engagement and political accountability are really vital for Nigeria's development. There's no how we want to say this thing, right? We intentionally, in partnership with Enough is Enough, dedicate our Mondays to just talk about citizens' engagement, and it was intentional. It's not like we do not have other things we want to talk about in Nigeria. But you see, the more we keep on driving this narrative, the more we keep on putting voice to this very important subject matter, then hopefully we might find, you know, we might start to find, you know, some level of green light to say, okay, yes, citizens are now better informed. Because you see, by bridging the gap between citizens and government, fostering dialogue and empowering individuals through education, a more equitable and democratic society is very possible. Every Nigerian has a role, as he had said, and that role, they have it to play in holding our leaders accountable, in safeguarding our democracy, and also shaping our nation's future. Not be one man work. It is everybody's work. And so change begins with active participation and a collective. Remember, he said it. There's the part of the government, the part of the people, the part of the media. There's part of everybody. It's a collective commitment to progress. So if you truly love your country and you want to change Nigeria, then you must be very, very intentional about engaging, no matter what. If it means you have to go and join a political party, if it means you have to call your representatives to ask them questions, all of those things are very important. But thank you again for watching.